Murphy, supervisor here, and we're thrilled to have you here for this amazing event. We had one here a few years ago, actually before I was here, but I was a participant, and it was just remarkable. The information is just priceless, and it saves you money and time and aggravation. It saves your family money and time and aggravation, so we're really excited to have you here. I'd like to recognize some of our elected officials that are here today. And Bill Cunningham from the 18th District, Senator, would you like to come up and say a couple words?
Thanks, Trish. Thanks for inviting us here. I have a table in the back, as you can see. If there's anything we can help you out with state government, please stop by and see us. I just want to thank the supervisor for having us here and the clerk. I think this is a really useful seminar that they're putting on here. This can be kind of an intimidating process, and we always assume that to handle things like this, you have to hire an attorney, but sometimes you can do these things yourselves, particularly when you have the clerk's office and Clerk Yarborough and her staff willing to walk you through that. So as intimidating as it can be up front, getting this information is very useful. I just want to join the supervisor in thanking the clerk's office for coming out here and giving us a hand today. Thanks, everyone.
Well said. Thank you, Senator. And Representative Fran Hurley from the 36th District. Let's give her a big shout out.
You'll like me even more because ditto to what Bill said. Just thanks everybody for coming.
Very well said, I have to say. And we just want to give a shout out to Representative Kelly Burke from the 35th. She was going to be here and something came up, so she's feeling a little under the weather. But let's give her a round of applause anyway, because we know we love her and she does great things for us in the community as well. So now I would have the very pleasure of introducing what I think is probably one of the best clerks we've ever had in Cook County. This clerk, since she's gotten into office, has modernized things, rebranded things, changed things up, made things easier for us, and she is a workhorse like you've never seen before. And if you have a question, she'll get it. Her staff and their entire operation will get it answered for you. Setting things up like this, coming out to the communities, community outreach to make things easier for us. I can tell you from personal experience, when my parents are not here anymore, and they thought they had everything tied up in a nice bow for us, and everything was done, and my grandmother. And I spent years going through everything, trying to really sort it out, and it was done by very expensive law firms downtown. So this seminar and the way that you could do things with this, just to make it so easy for you, for your loved ones, and everyone else that you care about, is just a magnificent program. And she keeps coming up with more and more magnificent programs, and keep an eye on this one because she's there for a long time and she's doing a magnificent job. So please give a rounding applause and welcome to our clerk, Karen Yarborough.
Thank you so very much. I feel like I'm really at home here, and the reason why I do is because I currently work with this lady. I worked with her mom when she was a commissioner, and we were on the DNC together, and oh my goodness, I miss her so very much. Me too. So very much. And then there are those two people over there. Yeah, that'd be you. I had the pleasure of working with them in Springfield. I was in Springfield for 12 years as a state representative, and the 12 years was about enough for me to be there. And they've got it. Look, you guys need to give it up for those folks there because you have some excellent, absolutely excellent legislators in Springfield. Give it up for... I should have you come up and talk again. But anyway, I won't do that. But no, really, I mean, they do a tremendous job in Springfield on your behalf. So I'm Karen Yarbrough, and currently I'm serving as your clerk. So I'm the election authority for suburban Cook County, and we do all this work we do in Cook County, and they dumped another job on me. So I was a recorder of deeds before I became the clerk, and I was there for 6 years, and they said, oh, Karen, you're doing such a good job. You go over to be the clerk, we're going to give you another job. Well, okay, whatever. But anyway, I love my job, but I love the people even more. And what I really enjoy about the work that I do is, one, connecting people to their government. I think it's really important. We that work in government need to be out in the community talking directly to you about the services that are offered to you. So that's why I'm here today. Let me have my staff who's with me here today as well. Brian Cross is head of our Veterans Department. I bet you didn't know we did that. I didn't think you did. So I want to have Brian come up for a quick hot second to talk about our Veteran Service Office. How many of you are veterans? I knew you were here. Brian?
Good afternoon. It's great to be out here in the Southland with all of our veterans. About 9 years ago next week,
Speak up.
9 years ago next week, we opened up our Veterans Office at the Cook County Clerk's Office. In the past, veterans didn't get the type of treatment that they deserved from their county government. And Clerk Yarbrough wanted to make that a lot better. So we opened up our County Veterans Office on Flag Day 2009. The services that we provide to our veterans, the most important thing is we encourage our veterans to record their DD-214s. Too many times our veterans in their time of need, at their time of passing, medical, etc., do not have their DD-214 at hand. You may do this by mail, or you may come down to our office. The other thing that we offer to our veterans is the Military Veteran Discount Card, which, although unfortunately I have to detain myself from here in a few minutes, you can apply to after the presentation at our table at the end. This card entitles you to discounts at about 125, 130 different locations. And one of the most important programs that we were able to put together for our veterans and for discounts and to help them is, I know that we're definitely south of the Stevenson, so free White Sox tickets for our veterans. Yeah, free White Sox tickets. The White Sox have always been a very vet-friendly organization. They got some great people there under the auspices of Jerry Reinsdorf and his ownership crew. They've always put the veterans first. And I'd also be remiss if I didn't remind you that Worth Township, under the leadership of Supervisor Murphy, also has a veterans office of their own to help you. They are able to help you, and they're able to refer you to the agency as needed or provide the help that they need, because a lot of these forms we know are very, very difficult. So I want to thank each and every one of you for coming out, and as I said, if you're a veteran, at the end of this presentation, I invite you to come over to our table. You can obtain your military veteran discount card. We'll take your picture, and we'll send it in the mail to you by the end of next week, early week after. So thank you very much, and thank you, Madam Clerk, and thank you, Supervisor Murphy.
A side note, I just mentioned to Trish that her mom was there for the ribbon cutting for our Veterans Office, and I invited her to come down and get a copy of that picture, because there she was there with the scissors in her hand to cut that ribbon, and she was a big, big supporter of veterans. So I'm going to bring up Robin Staggers. So Robin is over these outreach events. She does all of the work, and I get to come and do what I'm doing now. But Robin does all the work along with Wendy. Say hi to Wendy over there. And these folks here were, oh, Frank. Come on out, Frank. He's hiding. I don't know what that's about. And Carlos is back here. This is part of our communications team. Johnny Diggs is, when you want to reach me in the clerk's office, you go through Johnny Diggs and he'll make it happen for you. But these folks really do the work. I have the best employees working for you in the clerk's office. So with that, Robin, why don't you come up and give us some housekeeping stuff?
Okay, absolutely. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Well, it's good seeing all of you here, and I'm sure you're probably familiar with the facility here. Is that correct? Okay. So if you have to go to the bathrooms say boys and girls. Yes, boys and girls. So they're out these doors to your left. We're going to ask that you silence your cell phones so that it does not interrupt the flow of the presentation. Now, when you came in, you were given index cards. Does everyone have index cards? These index cards are for you to write any questions that you have on them. And if you need additional cards, we have them for you at the table. Now, we're saving our Q&A to the end of the presentation. We'll collect the cards from you, and our panel of attorneys will address those questions for you, okay? Okay, our attorneys are Jim Gleffy. He's our labor attorney, legal counsel for the clerk's office. Kane Trin. He's legal counsel. He's responsible for property fraud and other legal issues. We have Ms. Bott, Mariska, Meritus Bott. She is one of our new community partners. So she will be going with us out to these events to answer any legal questions that you have. We are not allowed to answer any legal questions. That's why we have them joining us. So any legal questions that you have will be addressed by Marista, Bott. And then we have Slavin Illick. Slavin Illick is also one of our new community partners, and both of them are very well versed in estate planning and legal issues with regard to transfer on death and any other property-related matters. So we thank all of you for joining us, and we're going to go on with the show.
Hello and welcome. I'm Karen Yarbrough, your Cook County Clerk. Thank you for joining us for this presentation on property fraud and managing your property after death. The Cook County Clerk's Office is one of the largest consolidated clerk's offices in the entire nation. In addition to functioning as the chief election authority for suburban Cook County, we maintain birth, marriage, and death records, and we assist property owners in redeeming delinquent taxes. We also have a recording operations division that records and stores land records and other official documents, which includes deeds, transfer on death instruments, and real estate documents. Now, nobody wants to talk about death or end-of-life planning, but it's a critical issue when it comes to managing your assets to protect your family and your loved ones. And we all need to be aware of the threat of property fraud and how we can guard against this type of financial crime. At the Cook County Clerk's Office, we are here to serve. And we hope that this information you received today will be helpful on these important issues that impact all of our daily lives. Now, I'd like to introduce you to my trusty assistant who will guide us through this presentation.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Before we begin our discussion, we want to let you know that we will have volunteer attorneys available at the end of the presentation who can answer your questions about the topics we will be covering. If you are joining our program via Zoom and have questions that come up during the presentation, Simply type your question in the Q&A section through your Zoom link, and the attorneys will respond accordingly. Now, let's begin our discussion by talking about property fraud, which can also be known as deed fraud. So, what exactly is property fraud? Property fraud is the fraudulent and illegal recording of a document against your home's property records. We call it paper terrorism, and it's a very real problem and potential risk for all property owners. How can this happen? Almost every state has an open and public recording system, meaning that you cannot freeze your chain of title like you can your credit report. Plus, county recorders are not authorized by law to validate legal claims made in documents. Property fraud can involve the recording or filing of false or forged transfers of ownership, quitclaim deeds, or the filing of a bogus lien to steal property or harass an unsuspecting property owner. Even if your home is paid off, that does not stop someone from filing a new deed on top of it without the property owner's knowledge. Let's look at this NBC5 investigative report that takes a close look at how property fraud can occur.
By law, it is a line anyone can stand in and a fee anyone can pay. $40 is all it takes to get a deed or other document officially recorded in Cook County. A simple perk of open government openly abused by serious scammers.
I think they call them, financial parasites.
She was new to her office as recorder of deeds when Karen Yarborough says she first spotted the trouble.
To steal a home, all you have to do is doctor some paperwork up and Photoshop it, bring it to the recorder's office, record it, voila, you own a home.
Con artists exploiting a system that relies on the honesty of those who use it, recording forged documents in order to steal a home outright. Sound far-fetched?
This is a kind of crime that I never imagined that could happen.
It did to Chicago Treasurer Stephanie Neely until it happened to her.
I get this call, I'm like, what do you mean someone has changed the name on my deed? What do you mean? How do they do that?
In her case, a stranger recorded a fraudulent deed, waited until she was at work, and then changed the lock.
They want to physically be in your house, because once they're there, it's very difficult to get them out.
Precisely what happened to this Chicago woman.
This individual had paperwork that was Xerox that showed the deed was in his name.
She asked us to conceal her identity because
you're in constant fear that they will try something next, because believe it or not, they did come back 3 days later.
One man connected to her case was arrested and convicted. As the recorder's office continued to field fake documents,
I decided that I couldn't sit idly by and watch this happen.
Yarborough brought in this man.
They believe that the government created artificial duplicates of all of us.
An expert on sovereign citizens, the extreme anti-government movement often behind this crime.
They believe they can completely ignore our government and do whatever they want to do with impunity.
Pitcavage calls it paper terrorism and teaches the red flags, like the punctuation sovereigns add in the middle of names, the refusal to use mainstream addresses or zip codes, and how they employ lengthy, arcane terms. The flurry of documents they file may be fake, but their threat is real.
They're bullies. They're brazen. They think that nothing can touch them.
A lot of times they'll come in and overwhelm our frontline staff. It may be 20 of them will come in.
Yarborough has a catchy comparison she uses to get a non-believer's attention. In Illinois, it is easier to steal a home than it is to steal a car.
It's fraud and, they're taking people's homes.
So there is now a simple way for some homeowners to protect themselves, the free property fraud alert system. You load your property index number, then you get an alert if any document is recorded in connection with your property. Counties across the country are now turning to this kind of system as these cases of mortgage and property fraud continue to grow. Lisa Parker, NBC5, investigates.
To combat this problem, Clerk Yarborough created a property fraud unit with investigators and caseworkers who respond to and investigate any complaints of property fraud. The clerk's office also offers a free property fraud alert that will provide a telephone call or email to the property owner anytime a document is recorded against their property or the property of a loved one. There are 3 easy ways to sign up for the clerk's free property fraud alert. You may sign up in person at the clerk's office, you can sign up online, or you can sign up with a telephone call. Once registered, if you receive an alert or have a reason to be concerned about property fraud, you can contact the clerk's property fraud unit and our staff can help research the problem and coordinate a response. Call 312-603-4000 or visit our website at cookcountyclerk.com/propertyfraud. On a related note, while we're on the topic of your chain of title and fraud, property owners often need to obtain an official copy of their property deed when purchasing a home or for tax purposes. You should be aware there is a predatory practice aimed at homeowners in which companies offer a copy of your property's deed at a large markup price, sometimes exceeding $200. The clerk's office wants to remind you that we offer the same service starting at just $6, so there's no reason to pay exorbitant prices to gain access to these essential documents. Now, let's move on to the second part of our program, which is making plans to manage your property and assets in the event of your death. As Clerk Yarbrough noted, no one wants to talk about death or end-of-life planning, but it's critical to manage your assets to protect your family and loved ones. Having a sound end-of-life plan is one of the greatest gifts that you can provide to your children and family members. Consider this. What do you think these 3 legendary individuals have in common? Prince, Aretha Franklin,
87 years ago, our fathers,
and Abraham Lincoln. Actually, they have something very unfortunate in common. They failed to make plans for their assets upon their death. No will, no trust, and no plan. Now, let's consider someone who thought he had it right. Music legend James Brown, the godfather of soul. When he passed away in 2006, Brown's estate was worth an estimated $90 million. When he died, Brown left behind a plan for most of his estate to pay for scholarships for children in need in South Carolina, the state where he was born. But that will was challenged by family members after his death, resulting in more than 12 lawsuits. It took more than a decade of litigation before Mr. Brown's assets were designated as he had intended. So how do you get it right when it comes to your property after death? The best advice is to consult an attorney or estate planning professional to provide you with advice for your specific circumstances. But you should also know that under Illinois law, you can transfer your home, your car, or your bank account to a loved one without a will or a trust, and without having to pay any fees or court costs. Here are the details on how to transfer your property. First, a transfer on death instrument. The clerk's office has a free document on our website known as a transfer on death instrument. We call it a TODI. You can also obtain this document at no cost from any attorney or legal aid organization. The form should be completed and notarized and then recorded at the clerk's office in our recording operations division. The transfer on death instrument will then be recorded on your property's chain of title, and, upon your death, the person designated to receive your property can do so after completing the required forms. Please note that the clerk's office cannot assist you in the preparation of a transfer on death instrument or any legal document. We do not provide legal advice to customers. Next, let's discuss a payable on death instrument. You can transfer the funds from your local bank account in a similar way. Utilizing a tool known as Payable on Death Instrument, a person can transfer assets in a bank account to the beneficiary of their choosing after death. A Payable on Death Instrument can be obtained and used at most financial institutions for checking and savings accounts, as well as certificates of deposits, CDs, money markets, and savings bonds. Even if you have completed a Payable on Death Instrument, the account holder has full control of their funds in the account until the time of their death. when the account holder passes, the beneficiary can claim specified assets directly from the financial institution without having to wait for probate court proceedings. Finally, let's discuss a beneficiary affidavit. There is also a mechanism to transfer your car to a designated beneficiary. A vehicle owner may change, add, or remove a beneficiary on the title of their car by completing a free beneficiary affidavit through the Illinois Secretary of State's office. To obtain this beneficiary affidavit, go to the Illinois Secretary of State website at www.ilsos.gov. Keep in mind that if money is still owed on your home or vehicle at the time of your death, your beneficiary will be responsible for the mortgage and payments moving forward. On behalf of Clerk Karen Yarborough, we hope that you have found this presentation useful. The clerk's office is your first line of defense against property fraud, so we hope that you will take this opportunity to sign up for our free property fraud alert if you have not already done so. Managing your property and your assets in the event of your death is also critical to protecting your family and your assets, and to ensure that your wishes are carried out after your death. A copy of this presentation is available on the clerk's website if you would like to review it again or share with a friend or family member. Please visit www.cookcountyclerk.com/PAD resources to review the presentation. Now let's ask the volunteer attorneys who are joining us to introduce themselves, and we will open up our presentation for your questions.
What do you think? Does this look like something that could be helpful to anybody here? Okay, all right. So, Robin introduced the attorneys. Now, I think, Robin, you've given everybody the index cards. You were to write down your questions on the index cards, or if you gotta, if you just want to flip off, you can just stand up and say, hey, I need to know, and then you fill in the blank. So, who wants to ask a question? Who wants to go first? You just want to, oh, here we go. Here we go. Give me that microphone. Here we go. Here, wait. We want to hear you.
Oh, thank you so much. In filling out the form here, my home is on a double lot. Now, it has the property index PIN number. Both numbers have to be on that form, right, in order for the entire thing to be covered. On there. Is there any special way I need to do that?
The answer is yes, both would have to be on there, and so both PIN numbers need to be on the document. If you need to, you can attach an exhibit with the extra PIN number. You also have to remember that you have to include the legal description of those two lots. And this is really important because I've seen some errors out there, and I'll take it to what it looks like. Some folks will think that the legal description is like the description of their house. So they'll literally write in there, single-family house, 2 bedrooms, 2 baths, finished basement. That is not your legal description. And so if you find yourself in that type of situation that you don't know how to fill out this form accurately, and accurately is very important here. Seek out legal counsel to help you, and that's really important to remember. I would just like to add, in addition to what King Trin said, your legal description can be found in the chain of title. Your current deed, we wouldn't be able to record it unless they had the legal description on there. So if you had a copy of your deed, you can get a copy of your legal description from it and then include that as an attachment to the form.
Can you give an example of what a legal description might say? So
Legal descriptions are usually a bunch of, to layperson mumbo jumbo. They'll say like lot 2 of McAllister subdivision, XYZ. It's not something that's
northwest,
yeah.
east, whatever, it'll have that.
with the range
That's what
and,
you look for.
you know, township and all that. So,
Say the township, the town, the degrees of north, south, east, and west.
and
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to call this one out because I saw it here. If we have a trust and a will, do we need a transfer on death instrument? Who wants to take this one? Okay.
I'll take it. So it really depends. We were just saying it depends. If you have a will and trust, that's fabulous and that's great. When you created your trust, typically you put your house in the trust. So hopefully when you worked with your attorney, they prepared a deed, it got transferred into the trust. If that's the case, you don't need the toady. You don't need both. Okay? The toady I typically see if you have a will by itself plus the toady, when you don't have a trust at all. Okay? So a will goes with the toady typically. A trust typically already owns the house. Make sense?
Follow-up question. How do you transfer the property out of the trust?
Yeah.
Yeah, who does that?
That's a great question.
Who knows? How many of you know how to transfer a house out? Oh, one person. You're a lawyer. You're a lawyer, yeah. Okay, so how do you, who knows? We don't know. I don't know how to do that.
So if you plan on taking the property out of the trust, then I would work with an attorney and there would be a deed that the trustee would sign and take it out of the trust and put it back in your individual names typically, okay? However, if you're selling the property, it'll get transferred through the sale process. The deed will say John Doe as trustee of the John Doe Trust. Now that's the seller, and then the buyer's name would be, Bob Smith. So it depends. If you want to just take it out for the sake of taking it out, very easy to do. Work with an attorney, or I really suggest you don't prepare your own deeds, but if you try, definitely have it looked at. So you could get it out of the trust.
Hey, this is a savvy bunch here. You hear these questions? Oh my goodness. Okay, what do we have next? Yeah, I can do this. Okay. I am the surviving spouse of a joint tenant. Oh, this person typed theirs. How about it? Oh my goodness. Okay. I'm the surviving spouse of a joint tenant property deed. According to Illinois law, I am now automatically the sole owner of our property. I have completed a toady under my name using the form provided on the Cook County Clerk website. It has been witnessed and notarized. I understand I can have the transfer on death instrument documented. I have been given conflicting answers when calling the clerk's office. Do I need my spouse's death certificate and surviving tenant affidavit to prove I am the sole owner in order to have the toady documented?
All right, I'll take this one. So the first thing, I'm going to answer this one backwards. The toady is a document that does not operate until the day you die. So that's when the property transfers to your beneficiary. Okay? So what happens in this instance is if you are a joint tenant and the co-tenant dies, you do become the owner. In reality, there's theory and there's practice. In practice, somebody would fill out a toady, record it, and call it a day. The issue becomes when the beneficiary, assuming you die, beneficiary goes to sell the house, okay? And they do a title search of the property. They don't know what happened. So you're gonna have some issues with the chain of title, and those are going to have to be explained. So my suggestion is, in this case, you should definitely file, if you are a joint tenant, just in any case, and one of your co-tenants dies, you should absolutely 100% file the affidavit of the surviving co-tenant along with the copy of the death certificate. And then, once you do that, if you have a toady that's completed and you want to pass the property upon
your death to your beneficiary, then you should file the toady. That way, down the road, when somebody looks at that chain of title, everything will be covered. Okay? Is there a follow-up question to this?
Type neatly.
So, I don't know if, I mean, I can answer this question, or maybe one of the attorneys from the recorder's office. But if you have the affidavit done, okay, along with the death certificate, it should absolutely be recorded, just so that it simplifies down the road the chain of title searches, okay? Once you do that, you record the toady.
I can't do that at the same time?
You can do it at the same time, one right after the other, yes. Yes.
And the other question is, there's a record of fees and things like that. It doesn't give any information on the surviving tenant fee.
I think it's $98. I'm not from.
Okay.
It's $98. So if you walk in to record the document, it's $98. If you
Okay.
mail it in, remember to add $5
Okay.
for the mail handling fee.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Okay,
Sure.
thank
And
you.
follow-up is, it's very important. You've got the two documents. You've got to let the cashiers know when you come in that it's important that the order of the documents are known. So the order of the documents, you got to let them know. You know, your surviving joint tenant affidavit first, and then the toady. And it's really important to let those cashiers know. So if you're walking in to record it, you can just show the cashier the death certificate. It doesn't have to necessarily be recorded with the document. But if you're mailing that document in, you have to mark the exhibits. So the death certificate is your exhibit. Make sure that if you do that, and if you mail that document in with the death certificate as an exhibit, you redact the social security number, or else that becomes a permanent public record for everybody to see.
No.
That's really important to remember, that whatever you record, whatever document you record, and it's allowed to be recorded, is a public record that anybody with internet access around the world can look at. So you always keep that in mind.
I think, we're using some terminology here. By the way, I'm a realtor. I've been a realtor since the 70s, so I know a little something about this business. But we're using some terminology here, and someone has asked the question, what is a joint tenant? Are there other tenant types? Jim, you want to take that one?
Sure, Madam Clerk. So there's different ways where you could hold title, and joint tenancy is one of them. Usually there's a right of survivorship that goes along with it. So for example, if I decided to purchase a property with my friend Kang here, we can decide that we want to do it as joint tenants, so that if once something happens to either me or Kang, the other person would be able to obtain and keep the entirety of the property. That's what the right of survivorship is. There's another special kind of joint tenancy for married couples called tenants in the entirety. So my wife and I, we purchased a home. We hold it as tenants in the entirety. So if something happens to me or my wife, the surviving spouse would keep the property in its entirety. And it also has an additional benefit for married couples. It shields the property from creditors. So for example, if my wife decided to go out and buy a lot of stuff on Amazon and we can't afford, and at the end of the day, creditors are coming after us, they can't attach our property, unless I was, complicit in that. So there's an added benefit with creditors for tenancy in the entirety. Now there's a third way, tenants in common. Tenants in common are, you own the property together until you don't. So in that hypothetical where Kang and I buy a property, we hold it as tenants in common. I could decide I don't want to share a property with Kang anymore, and I could sell it to you, and he can't do anything about it. You get my interest, and your interest is whatever I had, and he remains the co-owner, but he has no say as to whether or not I could sell the property to you. Similarly, if we own the property as tenants in common and I pass away, he would not get my share. It would go to my heirs and not to Ken. So there's different ways of holding property, and you really do have to evaluate what's best for your situation. I strongly urge you to consult an attorney before doing that and purchasing property, because there are these little nuances that do matter. I've seen situations where husbands and wives have purchased properties as tenants in common, and unintended consequences result from that. So, and I don't know if our attorney partners want to echo or elaborate on anything I said, but that's
Does everybody understand what you just heard, or does it need to be elucidated a little more? Everybody okay? Somebody okay? Whoa, wait for me, wait for me, wait for me.
If you live with somebody and you're not married, though, what would be the best place? How would you set that up?
If you wanted the other person to maintain a right of survivorship, I would put it in as joint tenancy with the right of survivorship. Because tenants in common, like you said, if something happened to one person, it would go to that person's heirs and not the surviving joint tenant.
So you see, everybody's situation is different. That's why it's important to engage somebody who understands. You can get your brother-in-law who's a lawyer that doesn't practice law in this area, and you'll get what you get. But if you're closing on a property, you're doing anything with property, you should deal with a real estate attorney. A real estate attorney. If they don't handle real estate, it's just like doctors. You do not go to a podiatrist because you got a toothache, right? You do? No, you don't. You don't do that. So the next question is, what's the benefit of putting a house in a trust? Isn't a toady enough?
It is a loaded question. So people ask this question quite often, and toadies are great because you do have the benefit of saying, when I die, it's going to go to my kids, or to my sister, or to whoever you want to give it to, right? The benefit of a trust, in my world, is it has more flexibility. So what does that mean? So let's say you have 3 kids, and it says, the toady says everything goes to my 3 kids, equal shares. But then all of a sudden, you have an estranged relationship to one child, right? And you didn't plan on giving that money to that child. It's already going to go to that child automatically, right? The other issue is minor children. A lot of people think, oh, I'll just put my minor children on here. They can't really get the property until they're 18. And even at 18, do you want to give a kid that much money when the house sells? So that's another challenge. You could also end up giving it to a person who's already on Medicaid or SSI. If they have benefits from the government that they're receiving already, and all of a sudden they're the toady beneficiary, now you're giving it to them automatically, and they are going to be disqualified from SSI and Medicaid, which is a big deal because a lot of people, rely on Medicaid to be in a nursing home. Something like that. So there's a lot of reasons to do it through a trust because there's more flexibility when it comes to that, okay? So that's just my opinion.
Yeah. And just adding on to that, those are all valid points. And just an additional, what some people consider a benefit of a trust is anonymity. So when you record a toady, everything's out there. You're going to see who the beneficiaries are and all of that. With a trust, the owner of the property is technically the trust. It would say Chicago Title and Trust number XYZ. It's not going to say King or it's not going to say Jim. It's going to be the trust. And the trustee is going to maintain the trust and tell you who the beneficiaries are. And at any time, you can go and change who the beneficiaries are without necessarily alerting the world to that. And that's just an additional benefit of a trust as opposed to a toady. Toady is, I would say, ease of simplicity. You just need $50 and a completed document that's completed property and recorded in our office. A trust could be a little bit more complicated, but at the end of the day, provides more flexibility, as our partner has said.
That's a great point.
Fran, were you in the House when we passed this law for the transfer on death instrument? I think you were. You voted for it for sure. Sure she did. Sure she did. But when I left the House of Representatives, I got a chance to vote on this bill, and it's been a good thing for people who don't have a lot of assets. Most people have a home and they have a car and they may have a few dollars in the bank, and the reason why we do these workshops, the millionaires, they've got attorneys, right? And they'll be fine, but we want to be fine too. So here's a situational question. Now listen up. One of my relatives died recently. The family transferred the house title for the toady with a lawyer. Afterwards, they started receiving mail to the address with someone else's name. The mailings included a reference to a loan of $50,000. Should we be concerned? Look, everybody grabbed their microphone. Okay.
Absolutely, 110%. Yes, you should consult with an attorney and maybe look at the chain of title and see what exactly was recorded.
Or you can call this attorney at the clerk's office, have him take a look at your chain of title and see what the heck that $50,000 is. Is that right, Ken? You could do that.
Right, so let me add to a few points, some of the questions that are out there. So number one, if you sign up for a fraud alert in our office, whether you do it by mail or you do it online, it's really easy to do. You get an alert, and that'll tell you that a document was recorded against your property, and that's all it does. So if you have computer access, you have a trusted family member, you can review your chain of title. It's free. If you go to a website and they charge you money, wrong website. Okay, wrong website. And that's happened to people, so please keep that in mind. You can review the document that triggered the alert. It'll be the most recent one that's on your chain of title, on your PIN, and you can look at it. And you can read it. You can actually bring up the document and look at it. And if you have trouble with that, if you don't have internet access, give us a call. So 312-603-4000. And if we don't pick up, leave your phone number, leave your contact information, leave your PIN, we will call you. And then we'll look at your chain of title with you, and we'll see if there's a problem, and we'll help you out.
How many of you have a fraud alert on your property currently? How many of you want to have a fraud alert on your? Okay, I'll tell you what we're going to do here today. We're going to continue to answer your questions, but Robin, Johnny, Frank, and Wendy are going to come around with the forms. We're going to sign you up today. Today. We're going to do that today. How many of you have a cell phone? Come on, everybody's got a cell phone in this room. Are you kidding me? You could do it yourself on your cell phone. But every single person in this room, we will sign you up. Now, I had the experience when I was in the 19th Ward. Anybody know Matt O'Shea? You know Matt O'Shea, of course, everybody knows Matt O'Shea. But he was really concerned. There was something going on in his ward where some fraudsters moved into some of the properties there. And so he had me come out and we did our workshop. But he said, Karen, I have a lot of people in my ward and I want to make sure everybody's covered. So Matt asked me, hey, if I get everybody's PIN that wants to have a fraud alert on their property, can we just dump them into your system? We said, absolutely. Absolutely, we can do that. And so this was, oh my goodness, it must have been 7 or 8 years ago that we did this. I saw Matt recently, and he said he's got a lot of new people in his ward, so we're going to do it again. We do not charge for this fraud alert. Some of the other counties across the United States do. $100 a year. And every year you're going to get a bill. Cook County does not charge for this fraud alert. So as they're going around, let's entertain some more questions, but I want to make sure anybody who would like a fraud alert, and what this will do is it will call you if anything changes on your chain of title of your property. We will call you or we will email you. Okay, Robin's she's got the forms right here. You do not have to have your PIN. We can get your PIN. We can get your PIN. You had a question.
If your property's in trust, can you do that right now?
Yes.
And the second question is, where do I find to view the chain of title?
Okay, we're going to talk about that. Jim, we used a lot of terminology here, and we've mentioned chain of title several times. She'd like to know, what are we talking about, chain of title?
So a chain of title is just the record of ownership on your property going back to when the property started. So when it's you could find our chain of title on our, if you're looking for recent history, all documents recorded with the recorder deeds in clerk's office are on our website going back to 1985. For most individuals' purposes, that is more than sufficient. However, if you need to go back a little bit further, you could come down to our offices at 118 North Clark. In our concourse level, we have a vault where you can get documents going all the way back to the Chicago fire. Okay. So, and just so you're aware, chain of title, just as an example, when I purchase a home, I'm purchasing it from the last owner of record. Title companies, when you buy a home, will generally do a record search of your chain of title to make sure what you're buying is actually belongs to the person that you're buying the property from, or else they're not going to insure it. And if they're not going to insure it, chances are you're not going to be able to get a mortgage on it. And if you're not going to be able to get a mortgage on it, chances are the seller's not going to want to give you the property for nothing. So that's why the chain of title is important.
Okay, good people. I have to get to my next event. You have been a wonderful audience. These folks will stay here. Every single question will be answered. And I want every single person who would like to sign up for our free property fraud alert to do so this evening. I hope this has been helpful to you. If we're beckoned to come back again, we will come back again. But thank you so much for all of your questions.
One more round of applause for our illustrious Clerk Yarborough. Woo, thank you so much. And just to let you know, we've already signed up, and we said we want to do a big expanded one next time too. So we're the first on the list.
Well, we're going to have to read our own questions from now on, I guess. All right. So next question is, can you put more than one name on your deed in case of your death? The answer to this is yes. That being said, Jim just discussed the typical 3 tenancies, the way people hold title. And there's legalese involved in how these tenancies vest, okay? If you're putting more than one person on the deed as a grantee, you gotta be very careful of how you write it so that something doesn't happen down the road of, what you did not want to happen. In Illinois, if you do not properly write the tenancy that the grantees are getting, the default is tenants in common, okay? So be very careful. If you should definitely consult an attorney at that point if it's more than one grantee, okay? So the question is, can you put the deed with the surviving children? Yeah, you can and you can name them, but then the issue with the kids, if they're minors, they're not minors, then yes. And so if you want to leave it to your kids, yes. And if you want to do it in a deed is a different thing than toady. Just so you know, and you said deed in here, so we're talking the kids being a grantee. If you're leaving it to your kids, consult with an attorney to make sure that the right tenancy vests for the kids. Thank you.
So you want to put the deed to say you and your children as owners? Is that the question? I would do a toady. I would do a toady so that upon your death it goes to your kids. Joint tenancy with right. Well, generally you do tenants in common for kids so that it can go even further down to your grandchildren if you have any. Okay? And I only say that because sometimes people think the easiest way is to put myself, my son, my daughter on the deed and have the ownership be like that, especially if your house is fully paid off. My concern for that is if any of your kids ever get sued, that house is now 1/3 owned by your child who just got sued. So just be careful of putting your kids on as owners while you're alive. The toady will cover exactly what you want, that upon your death it goes to your kids. Does that make sense? Okay.
One thing with the quitclaim deeds, I know there's all sorts of software you can use. Be very careful because there could be tax consequences when you use those, okay? So consult with, with the CPA and an attorney as well, okay? Because I've seen, where people got stuck with tax bills at the end of this, huge tax bills.
Hello? So, got a question here regarding the property fraud sign up. Can multiple people be signed up for a fraud alert on property? So example, house owner and family members. Yes, absolutely. Also, if you've got the form today, you fill out multiple forms or put in the multiple phone numbers. If you're doing it online, super simple. So all you need online is the name, the property index number, a phone number or an email address, and you just keep entering it to your heart's content. You can put your son, your daughter, your grandkids, whoever's that you trust, and knows also. That's really important. Make sure that whoever signed up for the alert knows that they might get an alert, because once you get an alert, you'll hear a voice, somebody telling you, hey, there's a document that's recorded against your property. If you don't let your trusted person know that they've been signed up for this, that's gonna cause their heart to go down to their stomach. So always keep that in mind. Absolutely. You can sign up for phone, you can sign up for email, you can sign up for multiple emails. I have seen many different variations of that, and so feel free to do that. Definitely. Feel free to do that.
Also, I know there's a lot of people that get refinances and things like that. It's important to know that just because you get an alert doesn't mean that there's fraud. You get an alert just because there's a document recorded on your chain of title. So if you do a refinance and you have a fraud alert on there, you're going to get a text message or a phone call from our office saying, hey, something's been recorded on your property. You better check it out. You could say, oh, well, I just refinanced our mortgage, so that's what that must be. But still validate it with our fraud unit. The fraud unit phone number, if you didn't write it down, is 312-603-4000.
You don't have to give us that part of the information. Just the PIN number and whoever the contact person is, so that we know who we're going to call, and that's important. Yep.
If you get a fraud alert, definitely call our office. We'll have one of our property fraud investigators talk with you. The phone number for the property fraud unit is the number I just gave, 312-603-4000. We have several property fraud investigators on site, as well as Mr. Trin, who's our legal counsel for recording operations. They'll do a quick search of our records to make sure that the document that was recorded is something that you're aware of and knowledgeable about.
And just to add on to that, if you get an alert, and if you want to, you can look online yourself and check the document. So that's the first thing you should do. And just as a matter of experience, the vast majority of alerts are because you refinanced or you quitclaim deed the property to your loved ones. So it's typically not a problem at all. And then after that, somebody mistyped a piece of information and some errant document ended up in your chain. All right, that's another level. But again, that's really rare. So the typical is that it's something that you participated in. But look at it, and if you're not familiar with it, give us a call.
Okay, I have a pretty simple question. What's the difference between a beneficiary versus a payable on death, which I know the video had showed. So really the difference between that is just depends on the type of asset it is. So payable on death, just like the video said, it's really for your checking, your savings account. Even sometimes your investment accounts have the ability to add a payable on death. And it's exactly like a toady. So upon your death, that fund will go to your beneficiaries that you've named as payable on death. So you have to physically go to the bank and tell them, I want my name, these names to be on there. The beneficiary, that's a typical, designation for IRAs, retirement accounts, life insurance, any like tax deferred account, which is like IRAs, 401ks, 403bs, 457s. There's so many different types of retirement accounts, but almost all of them have a beneficiary. So that's the only difference. It's just a different name for it. Okay.
All right, next question. If you signed a quitclaim deed to a family member and they never recorded it with your office, who does the property belong to? Okay, I'm reliving nightmares from some of my litigation cases, but I mean, I can answer this question. And the answer is kind of like, it depends, and depends, what ends up down the road. Because the last person who's the grantee in the chain, okay, if somebody goes to the recorder's office, they're going to say they are the owner of this real estate, okay? Because the deed never got recorded, nobody knows about that person, okay? So that person who's in the chain can possibly, sell the property, refinance it, do whatever an owner can do. So it's very important that if you do complete, and fill out a quitclaim deed, to go and record it so you can put the rest of the world on notice, who the grantees and the owners are, okay? So that's that. Do
you think would it be good to have an example just to explain the situation, or?
Parents had, 3 kids. 2 of the children, they grew apart, I guess, and they said, we're going to give it to the third one. The third kid, I don't know if they died or something, but mom and dad died. So all the kids line up, they begin proceedings in probate. They want to sell the property, split it. It was a nightmare. And the thing is, at the end, you can fix everything if you throw enough money at it, okay? And it got fixed because everybody lawyered up and, lawyers went to court. But any time, this is not something you should, dabble in and be like, oh, let me do this and I'll do it tomorrow. If you're going to do something like this, fill a deed out, complete a TOTI, go file it as soon as you can. Do not put it in the junk drawer in the kitchen, okay? It's no good there. The deed is a deed, and then if you die, the deed is still a good deed. It would have to be recorded, but then, depending on how much money we're talking about, somebody can challenge the deed and they can say it could have been fraudulent. All sorts of stuff can happen. So if you're going to have a deed and you're serious about this, record it right away.
Okay, the question is, what can you do once someone already died? Is there an easier way to get the title in your name? I assume it's the title of the home. Again, it depends on what other assets there are in the estate. So I'm going to give an example of if the only asset in the estate is pretty much the house, which happens quite often, and the family comes to me and says, there's 2 kids, there was no will, mom and dad really just owned this house. Yes, we could do one of 2 things. We can open a probate estate and get somebody appointed as the administrator, and that person can sell the house, right? As many of you know, probate is not a good solution. The second option, which I've offered quite a bit in the last couple of years, is what is called a bond in lieu of probate. What it means is you got to find the right title company, and what will happen is they'll look at the chain of title and see that the people have died that own the house. If you could present the title company with an affidavit of heirship that Johnny and Susie are the only heirs of this estate, there's a chance that the title company will say, okay, we'll take that as your affidavit, but we'll charge you an extra bond in order to get the transaction through. But they'll take that risk and say, okay, you're telling me there's only 2 kids. Because what if there's some random child that comes up and says, hey, I should have been on here? They're taking that risk and having that as a possibility in the future. For that risk, they're going to charge you roughly 2% of the purchase price. So it's a hefty bond. So a $300,000 house is going to be $6,000 for this bond. But you do avoid probate, so that's the advantage of this option. Probate has its own challenges, it's public record, and people know about it. So this is private for the most part, and it's a nice option.
Next question. If the beneficiary of a toady is unaware of their inheritance, does anyone inform them, and should the attorney? To my knowledge, nobody informs them. So if you're going to do something like this, make sure you inform them, whether it's your kid or a friend or spouse or whatever, and say, listen, if something happens to me, here's the document, that I recorded, here's a copy of it, and make sure when I die you follow up with this stuff. And this is a very important point I want to make, actually. And this is one of my fears. It's a true life example where a father left a condominium to his son. And so what happened is he told his son, the condo's paid off, and when I die, it's yours. Well, the son lives 3 states away. Dad dies, but the son just kind of figures, I have a condo in the city, and I'll deal with it when I get around to it. Well, what happened is the property taxes were not paid. And they went to a sale, and a tax purchaser bought a paid-off condo for next to nothing and sold it the next day for thousands of dollars. So it's very important when you do this, you have to tell people, especially if the property is paid off, to follow up and make sure they have to go to treasurer's office and put the tax bills in their names and all that good stuff. Okay? Thank you. That's on that.
Next question is, when I go to the bank, do I have to present a copy of the death certificate? So I'm assuming someone has died, the decedent's account is generally frozen. You go to the bank, they're going to ask for a lot of things. So, you can understand, especially now, banks are very, 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 very careful, cautious. What they'll ask you for is certainly the death certificate, but then they're also going to, if the account doesn't have a payable on death, a beneficiary, anybody listed on there as a co-owner, what they're going to ask you is a death certificate and typically a small estate affidavit if the account is less than $100,000. So you'll have to get that filled out, bring the death certificate, and typically they'll give you access to that account. If it's greater than $100,000, that's when you have the problem. You'll likely need to open a probate estate just to get access to that account. Okay?
If the bank holds title and you pay off your house, how do you get a copy of your title back? So this question would be a good question if we were in a different state. So there's some of the states, there's a lien theory and I believe there's a title theory. That's what they call them. In some states, the bank actually has the title to the home until you pay it off and then you get it back. In Illinois, that's not the case. The mortgage is just a lien. So once you buy the house and the deed is recorded, the title to the property is yours, the mortgage is considered a lien, okay? So once the mortgage is paid off, you wanna make sure, sometimes the bank will record the release of that mortgage on its own. Sometimes they will send it to you, and make sure you take that document to the office and pay the $98 and record it, because that's going to put the rest of the world on notice saying that the mortgage that's lien against this property has been paid off.
That's a very good question. I just want to follow up on it. A lot of people think of mortgages just like a car loan. Like you don't get the title to your car until you pay off your loan with the finance company. And then after you pay off your car loan, they'll mail it to you. In terms of real estate, when you purchase that property and you get that deed on closing day, you own that property. The mortgage is, like he said, a lien, but you are still the owner of the property. If you don't pay that mortgage, the mortgage company will file a foreclosure action and try and foreclose on that lien and take the property from you, but you are the owner of record, even if there's a mortgage on the property. And there's a follow-up question. Well, the title is still in your name, even with the home equity loan. It's the same as it's a different type of lien. Like one of our attorney partners said, when you pay the mortgage off, they're supposed to give you a release of mortgage or something like that. That just notifies the world that you have paid off this mortgage and that they no longer have a claim on your property. Yeah, this is something we see quite often where a lot of times the banks won't necessarily process the releases very easily. They might just send it to our office, but the release gets mailed somewhere else other than where you're living. And it creates a lot of confusion and frustration. I would suggest as soon as you pay off your mortgage, get a hold of our office, get a hold of the mortgage company, and just stay in constant communication to make sure that nothing falls through the cracks. Yeah, so they just like when you buy your home and the deed has to get recorded, the release of mortgage would have to be recorded as well. So that's another $98 fee that goes to the county. But the mortgage company that's releasing it is generally going to pass that cost on to you one way or the other.
And I just want to say, if you're thinking about purchasing a home, at the closing, you get an envelope, sometimes you get an email with all the documents that you signed. Back in the day, most people would take that envelope and they would pitch it somewhere in the corner, wait till the basement floods, then throw it out. You should hold on to those documents until you sell your house, because there have been cases, we're all human beings, the title companies are not, superhuman individuals. We all put our pants on one leg at a time, and somebody forgets to record a deed. It happens. And that envelope is really, at that point, really the proof that you own the house, okay? So what happens, so the question is, the banks get sold and the loans get transferred. So when you do pay off the loan, you will get a release. Make sure you record it, because the real difficult scenario is to find out who is the bank that can issue the release down the road in order to clear your title, okay? And then the attorney can spend hours just chasing somebody down to find the release, okay? To get a release, because a lot of title companies depending on the amounts, they may not even insure title, and then the buyer will probably say, I'm not buying this house. So yeah, once you get those documents, make sure you record them. Like I said, some companies, when you pay off the loan, they'll charge you recording fee and the last payment. Other ones send you the release to record yourself. Correct. The release, once the loan is paid off, it should come from the bank, and then you should record it. Absolutely 100%.
And this is where it gets confusing too, because sometimes the bank will send you the release. Sometimes they'll just send the release directly to our office and not tell you. So we may have the release on file, but you're not aware of it. Yes, it would be in the chain of title. So
to follow up with that, go online, go to our website, and enter your PIN. And if it's been recorded, it'll show up there as a release.
Any more questions? Anyone? This is your chance for free legal advice. Oh, yes. That's a question for the guys in blue shirts.
This is, with sovereign citizens, the vast majority of what I have seen in my experience are strange documents. They'll come in and they'll say that they're a citizen of a different country. And so that only affects them. When we're talking about fraudsters, those are the people who actually come in, target a piece of property, and in my experience now it's been quasi-abandoned property. So these guys go around, look at the neighborhood, see what's been boarded up and what's not. Then they'll observe that property and they'll record a deed against it. In terms of the sovereign citizens nowadays, what they do again is they'll record some strange, they'll try to record some strange document that says that they're somehow separate and apart from the United States. And so that doesn't necessarily affect somebody's title, that affects them. So they somehow shift it with going against other people's property to doing things that they think separates themselves from being in America. But for the concerns here, I think in this room is that check your chain of title. If you have questions about your chain of title, you don't have a computer system or something, give us a call. It's important to give us a call, and we'll go through your chain of title and see if there's some document that may have been recorded against your property. If that's the case, But again, it's all online. It's all free. Again, if you go to a website, and I've had this conversation, unfortunately, with taxpayers, they go to some website, they Google it, and they get to some website that charges them money before they can look at a document. Don't do that. When you come to our website, you push in your PIN number, you can see your chain of title, you can click on a document, and the whole document will come up, and you can actually inspect it for yourself. You don't have to pay a thing. If you want to have a copy, you can pay $5, but you don't have to. I hope that answers the question. No, go, please.
I just don't understand how hard. I mean, they're walking in there with something that looks like a deed or a mortgage, whatever. But the fact that I get that they're from another country and they don't think the rules apply. But why don't they apply? Number one, and then number two, we won't know anything until we check our records, correct? And then you say go to you. And then you start an investigation, but it sounds like it's still a whole lot of hassle, like you have to hire a lawyer and all that stuff. True? Am I right, or am I missing something?
So I think the question revolves around, can we prevent these fraudsters on the front end from recording a document against somebody's property? And so the way the state law works and the way it's been put together is that the clerk's office is ministerial. All we do is check for basic recording requirements. So if you come into the office with a deed, we'll check for the PIN number, the legal description, the mail-to address, the prepared by address, the taxpayer of record new address, if it's there. We don't check for accuracy. So if you come in and, pardon this example, it's pretty extreme, but if I say Kang Trin deeds his property to Walt Disney, we're going to record that deed. We can't question it. So on the front end, that's what I call the front end, that is the recording part, where you come in and record a document. It's purely ministerial. We don't check for legal effectiveness or your legal right to record a document. We can't do that. So that's why it's important if you get an alert, you sign up for the alert. And it's important that if you get an alert, look online right away. It might be something that your mortgage company did. You got a release. That's awesome. But that would trigger an alert. You know?
Legal recourse?
So if it's something relatively straightforward that we can handle, there's somebody like I put a deed on your property and it's totally fraudulent. I signed your name to it. Yeah, we'll take that case. But again, that's really rare. The vast majority, in my experience, the vast majority of the recordings are legitimate. It'll be your bank. It'll be a bank assigning your mortgage to another bank. Right? We see that a lot, and it'll trigger an alert to you. If you refinance, that'll trigger an alert, and not right away either, because again, you sign off on your documents, and it takes another few months before the bank sends those documents to us for recordation. And then the second set is what I call indexing errors. So it's a lot of numbers. Sometimes they're not written really well. You know, a 7 looks like a 1. And so a document ends up on your chain of title. It's not supposed to be there. Give us a call. We'll look at it, and then we'll move that document to where it's supposed to be. That's the second set. So straight out fraud is actually, it's there because, you know, I work there and I see it all the time, but in terms of the vast majority of the properties, we've got 1.2, 1.4 million parcels in Cook County. So what I see is a lot, but in terms of the vast majority of properties, no. To record a document, we don't check for the legal right to record the document. And that's the ministerial duty. So the state law is set up to allow the public at large to record documents, and that's how we set up our system. That's the best way I can explain it to you. Okay, I think that is all. You have one more question, sir?
So if you're going to donate property to a charity, you should probably contact the charity first and tell them you want to donate the property, because sometimes they may not take it depending on what type of property it is. And I mean, I just had a client who wanted to leave he had 2 properties, the second home, he wanted to leave it to a charity. And he was like, you know, they're going to do it. And I was like, why don't you just sell the property and then give them cash? They'll appreciate it way more. And that's what we're doing now. You know, but you should contact the charity. If you're going to donate real estate, 100% contact the charity first and see if they'll take the property.
I would also just make sure that generally the family finds whatever whatever is giving that asset to the charity, somebody in the family hopefully has found it, or somebody. That's the only way that the charity will even get it. So what sometimes happens is you do have people who don't necessarily have surviving spouses, surviving children, surviving anyone, and we can't find the will. So it is possible that all of a sudden there was a will somewhere and the charity never gets it because nobody knows about it. So when you do create your estate planning documents, have at least somebody know where it is. someone that you know, if something happens to me, here's where it is.
So a land trust is a creature, it's a statutory creature. Illinois is one of the states that has it. So the result is the same. The way you get there is slightly different. But for all practical purposes, it is the same. It's in a trust, it provides anonymity, and you have beneficiaries that you can name after you pass. So land trust companies typically charge annual fees. I don't know, maybe some of them do it monthly. But yes, with the land trust, there are fees associated. And in my opinion, it's well worth the money if you have issues with keeping paper at home, because there have been cases where if it's not a land trust, it's just a typical trust, they cannot find, because when you pass and the kids want to go sell the house and be like, we know mom left this to us in a trust, and it was called mom's trust number 1, and the title company is going to say, we want to see a copy of the trust to make sure this is legit, and nobody can find it. In those cases, land trust companies, they're big, typically corporations, and even if they go under, there's another company that inherits the land trust, so the paperwork will never get lost. So the annual fee, I think, is well worth it in that respect. Yes, you can. Anytime you want. You do have to pay the bill before you can take it out, just so you know. They won't let you take it out without paying the bill due.
Well, what did you guys think of that? Thank you to our lawyers, to Karen Yarborough, to Robin Staggers. I love this woman. I've known her for years and years. I know we were talking a lot about my mom. She was the very first woman ever to be elected clerk of Worth Township and then supervisor of Worth Township in the 80s. She was Joan Patricia Murphy. I'm Patricia Joan Murphy. I'm the third woman to be elected here. So it's like coming home, and when she was sick, she said to me, I need you to do this because you are the only person that will take care of the people that I care about so much like I did. And then you'll do more because you have your dad in you. So an event like this where I can come here and we can give you all this information and help people is warms my heart. And I know that she's looking down from heaven saying, yes, do this and do this more with the people that she loved and the people that she loved to take care of. So I just wanted to let you know who she was, because everyone's like, her mother, her mother, her mother. But that's why she is amazing. Thank you all for coming out. I hope you had all your questions answered. I'm going to turn it over to Robin, and she's going to give you more information in case you didn't get your questions answered. You can always call us. I think everyone has my card. You can always call me, and I'll give you a card because you didn't get it on the way in. And you could reach out to the township, and we'll get answers for you as well and get you to the right people. So thank you so much. Thank you to these brilliant attorneys for answering all our questions. Nothing like free legal advice, right? All right, and with that, I'll turn it over to Robin. Thank you.
Okay, 2 things. If you with the property fraud alert that you filled out or you're filling out, if you own more than one property, you have to fill out more than one form. So you have to fill out a form for each property. The second thing is we have our events posted on our website and on social media. If you'd like to attend a future event, please check our website. You can come to these events as many times as you want to. We also do these events not only in person, but we do hybrid events too, where we do them in person and via Zoom. So you can join us that way. And then the third thing is, I want to thank Patricia Joan Murphy for bringing us out. This is the 3rd or 4th time we've been out here, but this is the first time we've been out here since she's been township supervisor. So thank her for bringing us back. And if you want to hold one of these events, you have an organization that you belong to, and you want to hold one of these events, you can contact me at the clerk's office. We'll get it scheduled, but we ask that you partner with your local legislator or your local mayor or whomever so that we can maximize our attendance. So thank you, Emeritus Bott, I got it right. Thank you, Attorney Illick, for coming out and being our partner. And thank you guys for coming out. Have a wonderful, wonderful evening.
One more thank you. I have to thank the staff here at Worth Township. Maureen Ryan back here, Katie Elwood, everybody that works at the township. They make us look good because they do all the work to put all this stuff together. So thank you guys so much. They're amazing. Every single person who works here, if you deal with anyone in any of our departments, they're just the best you could ask for.